So, interesting article here on the F1Chronicle.com concerning Russia. Now, of course, Russia was on the Formula 1 calendar all the way until 2021, and there was going to be a Russian Grand Prix continuing all the way until I think the deal ran to about 2026 or something like. They were going to move to Agora Drive, relatively near St. Petersburg. I think it's about 100 miles away from St. Petersburg, but by Russian standards, that's relatively close. And obviously they were in Sochi all the way from 2014. Then obviously things changed. The special military operation, shall we call it, occurred and has been raging on ever since. But it's not a war. No, definitely not a war. Don't be silly. What are you talking about? But let's talk about this here, because there's been rumours about Russia wanting to come back onto the calendar. Russia saying also they don't want to come back onto the calendar. And there's also been rumours about the FIA and Formula 1 entertaining the possibility of returning to Russia, which would be rather controversial to say the least. So I'm going to reserve judgment until I read this all out for you guys here on the F1Chronicle.com. So let's dive in, guys, and I'll give my thoughts at the end after I have read this out. Russian racing drivers and teams have struggled with F1 governing body, the FIA, could finally be nearing an end. It was Haas who ousted Nikita Mazepin and his sponsor Uralkali at the outbreak of the Ukraine crisis 3 years ago, but the FIA simultaneously imposed restrictions on any drivers or teams in all FIA competition. Today, any Russian driver either needs to voluntarily renounce their ties to Russia, like Robert Schwartzman, who switched to an Israeli license, or sign a document condemning Vladimir Putin's regime and agreeing to race under a neutral flag. But according to three-time Dakar Rally winner Anton Shabalov, who refused to agree to the FIA's conditions, changes in the FIA's attitude may now be afoot. As participants, including the guys from Kamaz, we are ready to get back even tomorrow, he told TASS news agency. I hope that in the coming years that this will all stabilise and we will all be able to take part again, but I cannot say when exactly this will happen. It depends on the FIA. What I can say for sure is that in the near future, in February, negotiations on this topic are planned. It needs to be resolved now. The Dakar has ended and Formula 1 season is yet to start. Soon the FIA president will be much less accessible, Shabalov added. The Kamaz master team dominated Dakar for years until the Ukraine crisis. Shabalov even says that direct competitors are looking forward to the Russian team's return. This talk has been ongoing for years. I think they will only be glad to see us, says Shabalov. As you may have noticed, there is no closeness or intrigue in the races now. There was a gap of 2.5 hours between first and second place, he added, referring to the Dakar this year. So yeah, the Dakar Rally, for those that don't know, is a very prestigious rally that used to take place from France over to Dakar in Senegal, but nowadays takes place in Saudi Arabia. It's something that takes place during the winter, at least it does now anyway. It might not have done back in the past, I'm not sure when it used to take place, to be fair, in terms of the time of year, but anyway, it's an interesting one. It's not come from somebody within Formula 1, but obviously this is an FIA sanctioned event, is the Dakar, so it's all under the same umbrella and those same rules and restrictions still apply. I believe there was a Russian driver this year in Formula 3 and they could not compete in the UK because of restrictions. I think they were allowed to compete during the EU rounds, but when they left the EU to go to the UK, there were restrictions on Russian athletes basically there, so it meant they couldn't compete at Silverstone. So those regulations are very much in place. There's not really any Russian Formula 1 drivers that are looking likely to come back, despite what Nikita Mazepin's been saying in the media recently. They are not coming back anytime soon. I can't really see anybody likely to. I can't see Daniel Kvyat coming back, for example. So in the immediate term, in terms of someone competing in Formula 1, there's not really anybody that's shouting out. But I mean, it's a real controversial issue, this, and honestly, I'm going to relatively sit on the fence of it because I'm just going to report what the thoughts are of it, basically. I mean, there are two schools of thoughts with this. I mean, for me personally, right, I would say that Russian companies, I don't think they should be allowed in Formula 1 because they are very much tied to the Russian regime, the Russian war effort. I feel like Russian companies such as Uralkali, they shouldn't be in Formula 1. That's just my opinion, of course, and that is the case currently too. Drivers, on the other hand, it's complicated. I mean, the odds of a driver being able to make it to Formula 1 who is Russian without Russian backers is low. I mean, it's low making it to F1 anyway, but it's really low with that. But even if that was the case, should drivers be allowed to race in Formula 1 if they race for if they race for Russian flag? Well, that's the complex issue. Some people will say, well, they're athletes. They should be allowed to compete under a neutral flag. No problem at all with that. They shouldn't have to sign that waiver that says that they announced the regime, which you can think that's controversial having to do that. You know, they always say that sports and politics should not mix, but they always do, inevitably. So it's a complicated issue for sure. I understand the arguments for, and I also understand the arguments against, but the FIA is clearly considering it. And just to put something else out there, Formula One goes to some pretty controversial countries. You know, they really, really do. And this is not something that's going to lead to a race in Russia anytime soon. I can't see them doing that while this war is ongoing. And again, if you follow politics, there are rumours about the new US president, Mr. Trump, apparently sorting out this conflict and getting a ceasefire in place. But I'm yet to see any concrete evidence of that. That's just a rumour. I have no idea what it is in terms of basis when it comes to facts. So yeah, what do you guys think? Because I've seen a mixed reaction in my comments. I've seen people saying that, you know, there's no way that Russian athletes should be allowed in Formula One. There's no way that we should have a Grand Prix in Russia while ever this is going on. And then there's some people that think, well, that's kind of detached from the whole war in Ukraine and they should be allowed to compete as a result. And I understand both sides for and against, but what do you think? Let us know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think the FIA is going to do as well? Do you think they're going to reduce those restrictions on Russian athletes or keep the ones they've got currently in place? Thoughts in the comments below. See you soon, guys. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you want to see more content on Formula One just like this. Have a good one and have a lovely weekend.